we're good to go. So we got Tyler Johnson of Don't Blink Music Group and Scene Daddy and Push. Tyler, how you doing today?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good, man.
Fantastic,
Thanks for
man.
coming on the first podcast ever. For
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to be on the inaugural episode. I feel quite the honor over here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this is cool. It's been something I've been talking about doing for a long time and never really had the time. And just now that I got some time after school, I just figured I'd pull the trigger on it and get into the schedule again.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like the biggest thing, even, I mean, to, I guess, jump right into things, but the biggest thing in like something like this is to just start. Like, that's always like the biggest, I don't know,
Yeah.
advice that I've heard from people too, is just like start doing something. So I think it's super cool that you like took this on and actually got started.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And yeah, and honestly, it's kind of an honor coming from you, considering you are getting your doctorates right now, and you are also with three different companies. Like that's pretty nuts, dude. I don't know how you have the time for
I don't. My fiance absolutely hates it, but
that.
yeah,
Fair
I
So
know
enough.
thank you
it's
later.
busy. I think just the biggest thing is like time management, which was something I definitely had to learn being involved with so many different things. But it's cool. Spread myself a little thin sometimes, but kind of let each respective aspect of my life like push me forward in each other aspect. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
find a balance. So
absolutely, dude. You got it. Sometimes, you always drive yourself crazy.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, man. So I mean, so we know that you're doing everything under God's Son right now, but what are your specific roles with these different companies?
Yeah, so my like technical titles are I'm the president of Scene Daddy, the marketing director of Push, although I think that title has to change because my roles within the company have kind of changed recently.
Okay.
And then I'm also the co-founder and head publicist, I guess, for Don't Blink Music Group, which is a pretty new project that I started with Colin from the band Promise Game. Super
Okay.
cool. We just started that up. But yeah, within each of those, I pretty much handle the entire business aspect of Scene Daddy. So I'm sure you guys are aware it started as just like a meme page,
Yep.
just strictly entertainment. And then, once you have some sort of audience within some kind of niche, there's the opportunity for, people to, I don't want to say like take advantage of that following, but essentially like there's people or bands that would reach out to us and be like, "Hey, can you share our things?" And we're like, "Okay, well, we have an opportunity here to do more with this." So, yeah, I joined as essentially a writer in 2019. They
hmm
were just trying to get some content on the website in terms of like writing news or reviews articles, and then I think it was like 3 months later, I had written like half the content on the entire site. I was just like
Wow.
nonstop writing.
Yeah.
And Robbie, who owns Scene Daddy, he was basically like, "Hey, I need you to be, or I want to get you even more involved on like a business aspect." So I kind of got moved into like handling promotions, and then just kind of snowballed from there into like president. Now we like co-run Scene Daddy together, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of like my entry point into the music industry. And then from there, it's just been like meeting new people and fostering new connections. So within Scene Daddy, I connected with Adam, who owns Push,
hmm
also the vocalist for Dropout Kings. Shout out to those
Right.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically like, "I love your work ethic. I want you to help me out with things." So he brought me on as like the marketing director. It's kind of just like a loose title. Essentially, I'm more of just like an onboarding person. Just all of
Okay.
the clients that he brings into the company, I get them connected through like when we're going to run ads and things for them. I get basically their Facebook account connected to ours, just kind of like that back end stuff. And then I
hmm
also do a lot of YouTube advertising for Push. So that's kind of like my other main role there. And then from there, I was actually working with Colin from Promise Game. We were
hmm
working with his band through Scene Daddy, so we were promoting Promise Game, and then we got to talking, and we were like, we both want to do something a bit more creative. So we were originally going to launch like doing like album art and like those kind of like graphic design type stuff. And we were
Yeah.
like, we both want to be involved more on like a publicity level. He was also acting as like a booking agent through another company. He's like, I kind of want to do this out on my own. Why
hmm
don't we combine forces? And that's how that project kind of came to
Heck
be.
yeah. That's
So
cool.
yeah, just kind of like meet new people and don't turn down any opportunities was kind of how I got to this point, I
Dude,
guess.
that's I'm telling you, you never know what's going to come up when you don't turn down opportunities, unless it's kind of
Yeah.
like a, I don't know. I guess honestly, there's nothing really that bad that I've seen that comes out from not turning down opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something about knowing like your limits. Like I'm definitely at my limit with how much that I can do, especially because
For sure.
I'm like a full-time PhD student as well. Like I'm in the
You're
lab.
like trying to be the next Elon Musk of music scene, dude.
I'm in the lab like technically 9 to 5, and I just
Yeah.
squeeze in these other things before, after, and during. I'm pretty
Okay.
fortunate like in that aspect because my like supervisor in the lab is he's not like in all the time, so
Hmm.
he's like, as long as you're getting work done, I don't really care what you're doing.
That's fair.
um so yeah, it's kind of like the perfect setup to be able to do these like side gig things, which have
Yeah.
kind of been like super dominant in my life at this point. I'm almost like 50-50, but yeah, he
Right.
doesn't need to know that, I guess.
Yeah. We won't tell him about the podcast then.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a fortunate situation. And what I was saying was, I guess there's something in knowing like your limits in terms of how much you can take on. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, like saying yes to opportunities as they come along was kind of how I got to this point. So yeah,
Okay, sick. That's cool, man.
yeah,
Mario, did you have a question you were gonna ask him?
You got to say yes to everything. I feel like
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
to that respective threshold. What's your background like leading up to all this? Were you a musician before, or generally just like?
No, just a hardcore music fan, really.
Mhm.
That's all it takes, honestly.
Yeah, for real. Like I started my PhD in September of 2019, and I was like I had just finished a master's degree, and like I was doing a lot of scientific writing, but there's I don't know, a lot that goes into scientific writing that this isn't exactly fun.
Hmm.
Where I was like, I want to also practice writing on like just a basic communication level, and I was very passionate about music. So when I saw that Scene Daddy had posted this thing about joining as like a writer, to just like cover news and like review article or review like new releases and stuff like that, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Actually, it was my fiance who sent it to me. He was like, you should do this, you would be perfect at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I like
Yeah. They always know best.
Oh yeah, for sure. Props to her. So I like submitted an application and just joined that way. But yeah, no real technical like journalism experience, no like musicianship. Like I played a few instruments here and there, but nothing like hardcore.
Sure.
I was never like in a band or anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh well, why do you feel like you can criticize others? I really can't, but I try.
Right. Right. Fair. Well, you also really like writing too. I could tell. I mean, you
Yeah.
co-wrote a paper on microbiology or whatever it was. I don't understand it.
I mean, like the whole thing in science is there's this phrase, it's publish or perish, where basically if you're not like writing about your
I
work
think
and
that's like that for
publishing.
anything, but yeah,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
specifically probably science though.
Yeah, like basically your self-worth or like your worth in respect to your lab work comes from how much like scientific journals you can like publish in.
Yeah.
So like the main goal is to just write. Like you're always working on the next paper when it comes to science. But
Sure.
I kind of had the idea of going in like I've always wanted to go in like a professor route and or
Hmm.
just like a science communication route. So being able
Okay.
to break down like complex scientific subject into just like
Hmm.
very easy to understand terms, I felt like what could help me with that was just writing to a general audience about something else. So that's where I was like passionate about music. If I write about music, I can kind of find new ways
Ah.
to write things, and that I think it's translated into like my scientific writing as well. And I'm
Yeah.
like actually a TA for like a second year biochem course where I have to teach a 2 hour tutorial every week, and I think
Wow.
that's really helped with that too, like just being able to
Yeah.
communicate things to like people who don't fully understand what it is
Yeah.
that they're learning.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you study a good amount of psychology then?
No, so I'm in my PhD for biochemistry, so it's strictly like biology, chemistry,
Got you.
a little bit of biophysics, but
Hmm.
no like psychology. Yeah.
Gotcha. Because it just
Um.
sounds like I'm like, oh, there's probably some psychology tied into there into what he's doing, but
Yeah, no, like you can definitely think about just the psychology of like how you're writing things to people, but I don't like study that on just like
Yeah.
a
Cool.
basic level.
hmm
Can only
Well,
take on
that's what.
so much, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is. I mean, I keep. I hate to keep talking about. Not hate, but we're keep talking about your actual professional career with microbiology, but it's
Yeah.
just really cool what you do, and the fact that you're able to tie that into music. I mean, you're going to Italy, right in January with this stuff.
Yeah, actually, so I basically submitted an application to present my research at this conference that's in Italy from the 14th to the 20th of January, and
Okay.
surprisingly, I was accepted. And then,
Yeah, that's cool
um,
though.
yeah, so I was accepted to present a poster, and they actually reached out to me and asked if I wanted to present a full like half-hour presentation on my work too. So now I just like another layer of stress, but it's all good
Yeah,
stress.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I was supposed to go to San Diego earlier this year to present my work too, but like with COVID stuff, it got canceled. So I was like, I gotta figure out something that's even better. So I was like, ooh, Italy.
Yeah, for sure.
Take advantage of the free trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Has your I guess Scene Daddy push and all that stuff, has that been affected by COVID in any way?
To a degree, like in terms of like, okay, Scene Daddy definitely got hit hard. That was like the only thing I was doing when COVID started. So like
Okay.
writing articles and things when COVID hit, there was nothing to write about. Like there was, what COVID is doing to the music industry, but
Yeah.
in terms of like there was no tours to cover, there was like not a whole lot of new releases because I think people were like really pushing it back. I don't want to release music when there's nothing going on to like support that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think our content kind of hit like kind of a stall at that time, but we've kind of adjusted and moved on. And obviously like COVID has kind of come down since 2020, which is a good thing. So we're back to like full scale content and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was like the main thing that I noticed. I wasn't involved with Push or Don't Blink wasn't a thing at that time. So,
Sure. Sure.
but yeah, I mean, in terms of we were just starting to get to the point where like we were being accepted for like media passes and stuff to go cover tours and stuff. So when COVID hit, we were like, ugh, damn it.
Yeah.
I
For
swear
sure.
that was the situation in like many cases where, I think it was like the time it hit in might have been like spring or that first quarter like rollout.
Yeah. I remember I was listening to the Lead Singer Syndrome podcast, which is Shane Told's podcast,
Oh
and he was
yes.
like, "We had just gone to Europe, just dropped an album, and they got hit hard because of COVID." And I can't imagine being, like a musician in this industry and then just
Dude,
being shut
I
down. Like
know.
everybody too, like venues, promoters, everything got shut down. So
Yeah.
definitely
Well, I
a tough
think
time.
with that, it brought like the rise of like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and all that short burst type of communication. It really pushed that to another level. I mean, TikTok in
Yeah.
itself, I mean, kind of landed into our laps at the perfect time. You know,
Yeah, going from like having nothing to do to just like endless content
yeah,
being available to us.
exactly.
I guess it was
Right.
the perfect time. I mean, even if you look back at like Scene Daddy's Instagram page, you can see the transition from like basic memes into real format content. We like
Right.
had a discussion about it for months of like I think we need to pull the trigger and really switch to like real content.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we did because that has been our main source of content since we made that
Yeah.
decision.
I mean,
Um,
your meme game is still pretty strong. I'm not
we
gonna
try.
lie.
Like, there's other people on the team that are funnier than me when it comes to meme content. I make the odd
Yeah.
one from here, here
Sure.
and there, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, we do what
Yeah,
we can.
New Fury too. They do some pretty solid memes as well.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the big ways that they brought a lot of traffic to their written content too, more so
Hmm.
than we did. We kind of made the hard transition from like we were trying to get like the news and reviews thing going, but we had a whole discussion about it. Like it's not really, it's just like a cycle of work that we're not getting as much out of. So let's just focus on what is working. And
Right.
that's just like the meme real content. That's obviously
Wow.
popping off. Whereas like New Fury definitely found a way to integrate the memes into like their actual website traffic. They do a lot more of that than we do. So, good
Hmm.
for them for like sticking with it. I know
Yeah,
Brad really
absolutely.
well. I work with him all the time, so
Yeah.
props to Brad.
Yeah, he's doing very well, very well. Yeah, I mean, Marty, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm once I get
Hey,
going,
no
I get
worries.
going. So
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I've heard this rule like 80% other people's stuff, 20% your stuff to post.
When it comes to like posting Scene Daddy stuff,
No, just in like in
in
general,
general,
like on
oh yeah.
IG and your stories and stuff like that. But so that was so I'm curious. So it seems now that like there's been some discussions of how music is becoming so short term that like how do you think that might affect the future? Like where do you feel like it is, like the industry, like where do you feel like it is
that's
right
a good
now?
question.
That is a good question. I mean, I've heard like endless debates on like the TikTokification of music, like just going for that 15-second clip within a song. Who cares about the rest of the song? I
Hmm.
don't know if like that's a huge driving force. I listen to or I watch a lot of like the punk rock MBA on YouTube. He's
Yeah,
talked about this before, where he's like, I don't know if it's really a thing. I definitely see that like it can have an effect, especially when it comes to like our attention span. I think
yeah,
actually a big example of this has been the transition away from full albums and towards smaller EPs.
yeah.
Where
Mm-hmm.
like even if you think about Of Mice and Men's like last release, essentially they did like 4 small EPs that they then packaged as an album. I
Hmm.
think maintaining that level of content, like a single a month, that kind of strategy. Bands talking about that all the time, dropping 1 single a month to keep those monthly listeners up. We'll package it as a small EP. I mean, Bring Me the Horizons even talking about this too. Like they're like, oh, we may never do an album again. We're just gonna do like a bunch
Hmm.
of EPs. I think there's something there. Um, I mean, I've definitely noticed it in the way that I even consume music. I'm definitely more of a singles person than a full album. I was always a full album person.
Yep.
Still enjoy listening to a full album.
Hmm.
Um, but like in terms of how much content is coming at me, I kind of
Yeah.
like when it's like, here's another single, a single a month later, here's a little EP to hold you over. I don't know. I think everybody's
Mm-hmm.
different, but
Yeah.
I think that's
No,
going to be the prevailing method for a little while at least.
yeah. I think you're right though. I mean, when you open up Spotify, typically you're having it on shuffle or you're on a playlist or something like that. You're never going to find a playlist with a full
Right.
album. So
But
it's just in itself, it's yeah. I don't know.
bands are
Sorry, what were you
putting
gonna say?
together playlists of all their albums, and like the other day I was like I'm a huge Thrice listener, so I'm like, oh, they have a playlist with just their albums from in order,
Yeah.
front to back. And so I wanted to add like the thing I find, I write long songs, I write long intros, I'm an album guy too, but what I've
Right.
found is that we can, as a musician, we can work with the short term, like short songs, because it's like, oh, we had this endless amount of creativity and we pounded a minute and a half out of this song, and then we're kind of like sitting there scratching our heads after that. So it's like we can keep that bit, we can write another song that's like different, put it together, because you find that now too. A full song ends up being like two songs, like two halves of songs. You know what I mean? They'll have this
Right.
transition and
Hmm.
the song's different. So like I've been kind of finding those ways to utilize that, I guess. So but what else?
Yeah.
Um so how do you keep up, Tyler? I mean, it's always changing, right? The industry's always changing. How do you keep up? How do you?
Well, good question. I mean, in terms of like Scene Daddy content, like we made the transition towards Reels when that was really, popping off. We never really fully committed to TikTok, I don't think. We've tried to play around with it, and I think that's going to be a dominant social media platform for a while. So, like, we should, but I think we kind of missed the boat when it comes to that at this point.
Hmm.
So kind of just like, I don't, it's hard to like, in the meme and content game, like there's always something new that you can
Yeah.
jump on and just like meme or make some content from that.
Hmm.
We've really tried to, or I personally have really tried to put a lot of time and energy into building our network of partners. So something I've been doing I started like at the beginning of this year was reaching out to different YouTubers and different TikTok creators themselves, instead of like making all the content ourselves, partnering with these other people to be like, we'll share your content in exchange for XYZ. Or like,
Hmm.
if you look on like the Scene Daddy services page, so if there's any like artists, bands, whatever,
Hmm.
looking to be featured on like Scene Daddy, or if you're even looking for like YouTube reactions and things like that, like I've really put in a lot of time to forming um, good connections with like YouTubers in the reaction scene. So like Orion Reacts is a big one that we work with, Hardcore Game,
Hmm.
stuff like that, where bands can come to us for like they want to be featured on Scene Daddy, but then we also offer like kind of these a la carte other services. So like
Sure.
you can connect with these YouTubers to get your stuff featured on their channels and things like that. So I think it like we've kind of moved away from just always making our own content to curating content in a way that makes sense for everybody, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So I was gonna, yeah, that's actually I was gonna ask about that. Like, how do you go about presenting the idea to the, like, magazines or other online media publications of some sort, or even just YouTube reactors? Like, how does that exchange happen? You just be like, "Hi, I'm Tyler from Scene Daddy. I'm also getting my doctorates." Or like, how do you present that?
Yeah, no, there's very few people like that I work with in the music industry that actually know that I'm doing a PhD, except for the
Yeah.
people that I have on Facebook, because that's like the only
Okay.
place that I post.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of like YouTube reactors and things like that, like I was a big like YouTube reactor fan, so I just followed a lot of channels where I was like, I'm just gonna reach out and see what happens.
Yeah.
And 30, I would say like 30% of the time, you actually get something back, and that starts a conversation. Some people are very open to it. Some people are like, yeah, this is not for me. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Um, Especially yeah, with the TikTok creators too, sometimes they'll have their own thing where I'm like, I'm not looking to like partner with anybody, or no, it doesn't make sense for me to like work with you on this capacity. Other people, it does make sense. Like we have an in-house TikTok curator who does like stuff for us when a band wants, TikTok content created.
Hmm.
Other people are like, nah, I got my own thing. It's okay. So it kind of is
Yeah.
what it is. In terms of like Don't Blink Music Group, I act as a publicist there, so I'm reaching out to a lot of like magazines and other things. So that's just me on like a press level. Like, hey, I'm working with this band. They have this release. Would you be interested in covering it? Trying to obviously pitch that in an exciting and engaging way, other than
Hmm.
here it is.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
it's kind of the job. But
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
sometimes we get like random channels reaching out to us to work with us, like
Hmm.
the marketing team that ran when we were Young Fest reached out to us and be like, "Hey, we think it would be fruitful for us to have you create a meme for us. Would you be open to it?" We're like, "Perfect, we would love
That's
to."
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like random stuff like that. We've had like some record labels reach out and be like, this band's dropping the song. Can you create some like meme or TikTok content? Sure, always. So it just kind of like comes in waves with whatever's
Yeah.
happening.
So with Don't Blink Music Group, a band comes to you as a publicist and they say, "Hey, we've got an album, or so in this most cases now a single.
Yeah.
Do you and then figure out the budget, or how does that process start from conception to being on in like alternative press or something like that? How does that go from there?"
Yeah, so with like I'm pretty much so Colin and I both are kind of running independent channels of Don't Blink Music Group. He's more of the booking side of things. I'm the press side of things. We sometimes come together because he has press contacts that I don't have. I have some
Hmm.
connections in the booking field, I guess, that like we
Hmm.
can take advantage of. So we collaborate from time to time. But when a band is looking for me to run some press for them, like I have campaigns that are, if you want me to run press for like a single or an album, we can spend X amount of dollars. This is like the base rate from there. I have connections through Scene Daddy to like a bunch of playlists that we can get on, or like
Hmm.
TikTok creators or YouTube creators. Like we can get all of these other things for whatever budget you're working with. I like the system more where I'm like a constant press contact. So we
Sure.
have like call it like per campaign packages, and then just ongoing packages. So make me your main press contact for like the year, and
Hmm.
I will cover anything and everything that you have. I'm just acting as your press contact. If somebody wants to come to a show, they would reach out to me, sort of
Hmm.
thing. So kind of offer both avenues for the bands that want that, and for the bands that are just like, we just have a single and nothing else planned for the rest of the year, so it doesn't make sense. So I'm like, also
Right,
offer
right.
that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of we try to tailor as much as possible to a band's specific needs as much as possible, especially with booking stuff too. Like if you want like a short weekender run, that's going to be different than if you want us to pitch you to festivals for next year. Like that's a very
Yeah.
different situation. So,
Sure.
and then
Absolutely.
we have combined stuff too. So like we have some bands like on our roster where we work both press and booking for. So we're kind of like a full management capacity in that aspect.
Okay.
So again, it's very tailored to the artist.
Sure. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that makes it so much easier to be customizable. Just
Exactly. That's what we were going
yeah,
for too. Like so many different bands want different things that we're like, we just got to be open to like everything that people want to do. And we tried to
yeah,
do that as much as possible.
yeah. Absolutely. Do you think that? Do you think bands should wait to a certain point before they get somebody like you, or is that something that you kind of have to work towards? You do. So you've done 12 shows in a year already, and you're starting to pick up some momentum. Do you
Mhm.
then reach out to a publicist, or could this be something that, hey, I've got 5 singles and I've never played a show before, but I just want to get them out to the world? Is that also another reason for them to be able to go to a publicist, or does it
Oh, for
matter?
sure. Yeah, no, we definitely work with bands at different stages in their career. Some people have already played, like, some of the bands that we're working with have already played, like, a Blue Ridge or an Incarceration Fest that we're like, you know, we've worked with, or these bands have already played these types of festivals. So it's like almost easier for us to pitch them again. Like, hey, they've already played this. Like, let's do it again. They just want
Hmm.
somebody, they've reached the point in their career where they don't want to be doing it themselves, or we have like other connections within those festivals, or like promoters for different areas for touring, etc., that it makes sense to work with us in that capacity. When it comes to press stuff, I'll work with bands that are just starting out or bands that have been around forever. Like
Yeah,
again, when it comes to name recognition, obviously it makes my job easier if people are like, "Oh, I've seen this band before. Happy
yeah,
to cover them again."
yeah.
Versus somebody who's like brand new, never heard of them. You really have to like sell that more, but it's just
Sure.
like on me to do more essentially, or pitch that in a better way, or make these outlets understand why they should be covering this band. And yeah, we do what
Yeah.
we can.
That's the, that's the important aspect of having the four fans of the FFO that a lot of
Yes,
people are
yeah,
used to saying. And
you put
I don't
that
think a
right in the
lot of
header.
people. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize how important that is because it's an attention grabber. And
Yep.
for me personally, um, I'm more inclined to listen if I see a band that I recognize that I also like. And it's
Yep.
something easy like name three of the bands that inspired you to make this music. It doesn't have to necessarily fit your music exactly, but if
Yeah.
it's got some things that these artists have in your band, throw it out there. You never
Features will
know.
do the same thing. Like if you have a feature with X, who this person who is well known, that can make you like a name, or you can get your name out there just as easily. Like,
Yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah,
same kind
for
of thing.
sure. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got any other tips of the trade? I mean, I feel like you're doing so much. You're like an old man with the industry now. Got all these wise words of
Yeah,
wisdom.
and I feel like I'm doing a lot in like a short period of time too. Like it's been kind of like it's been weird to see how far I guess I've grown within the industry in a short amount of time. So it's been kind of like I don't know, uh, cool to see from my own perspective too. Like looking back, like oh man, I just wanted to like write some stuff about music, and now look at
Yeah,
everything we're
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
It's pretty cool.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think my main tips are just like be passionate about what you're doing. I find that like you can really get bogged down in the numbers, especially being like the main business person for Scene Daddy. Like it comes in waves. Bands that are doing like this time of year, nobody's like releasing. Not a lot of people are releasing music, so like
hmm
you can even see like business wise, we tend to dip around this time of year. That's just the way it is, and then it
right.
picks up. February, March when people are starting to plan for like the new year and everything.
Sure, yeah,
And you can really get bogged down with that. Like, oh, this is not like, we're not making as much as we did before. But like, if you're driven by strictly the passion, then you can really
yeah,
still like let that fuel you moving forward. So,
absolutely. Mario, you look like you had something to say there.
yeah.
So, with what you just said, these statistics are these Are these statistics from the listeners' point of view? Like, are those the dips that you see with the seasons and stuff? Is it like people aren't releasing music just because of like holidays, or is it like specific times where people just aren't listening to a lot of music? You know what I mean? Like, what kinds of what kind of analytics do you see that
Yeah,
that
so I
direct you
was
with that?
speaking mostly from like a business perspective where like bands will reach out to us and be like, we have this new release. Let's work, let's plan a campaign, etc. November, December, January are usually like really slow for us just because I
Hmm.
think it is like a holiday thing.
Hmm.
Especially I find in the alternative music industry, there's a lot of emphasis on like year end lists. Like I love doing that myself, like my top 10 albums of the year, top 10 songs. Like I find that that's really become like recognized within the scene of not a lot of people drop stuff in December because you've already missed like the year end list aspect of that.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know, maybe that's just
Mm.
me or being like in the niche like hardcore fan base, but
right.
I don't know, just yeah, when it comes to bands reaching out to us, we just tend to see like lower um I don't know, outreach at this time of year, maybe just because of the holidays.
Yeah,
Don't want to release something like too early in the year,
yeah.
maybe. I find like February, March super busy.
Hmm.
Also, August and September are usually super busy. October is probably the busiest month of like the year, though.
I believe the tour schedule also changes. It slows down towards the winter time and
Yeah,
picks back up. February,
especially where I'm
March time
from. Like,
frame.
I live in Toronto, so like touring schedule, like it's so
Yep.
cold out. Nobody wants to like tour through here all the time,
Right.
and
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's same
I,
thing here. Honestly, the Midwest is it's just it sucks sometimes.
I
Because
think
you don't
because
get a
of that
lot of
aspect,
bigger.
yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people are like writing stuff now. Like, oh, we're writing new
Hmm.
music to release, you know, Q2 of next year.
Yeah.
So I find that this is just the time when people are brainstorming, coming up with what they want to do. Then they reach out to us in like January, February, or so
Right. Right.
February, and that's when we
Yeah.
start to like plan for the rest of the year. So yeah, it just comes
Yep.
in
Yep.
waves that way.
That
For
makes sense
sure.
because I always think like, well, what if, I mean, so many people are spending so much time inside during these winter
Yeah,
months. You know what I mean? Like, are people consuming a lot of music? And I think maybe that's been a misconception I've had in the past trying to release music in like cold months. I think
Yeah.
it can depend what it
yeah.
is.
I find that
It
like
seems to be different.
yeah, you have to think about it as like a consumer too, because I always think, oh, especially with COVID, when like the
Hmm.
pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have nothing to do but listen to music, and I didn't listen to
Hmm.
that much music to be honest. Like, I
Right.
find when I was at home, I was doing other things like binge watching TV, or
Yeah.
I don't even know, like just not that. But if I'm on my way to work or because I work on a lab, I listen to music basically all day long. Like it's the only
Yep.
thing I can do.
Right. Right.
So, but if I wasn't going into work, then I didn't have that music
Yeah.
consumption aspect of my life. So I
Well,
think
I
maybe just
think
a lot of people are similar in that way too.
yeah, I agree with you, and I honestly think for most people, when you're listening to music, most people, you're listening to music while you're doing other things that
Yeah.
allow you to kind of separate yourself from having to pay attention.
Yep.
Like where they're doing dishes or you're mowing the lawn or whatever. And
Right.
it's part of the reason why podcasts have become such a good place for advertising, because there's that disassociation, that you could still be engaged and not be fully engaged,
Right.
and you're not going to necessarily skip through an ad on a podcast if it's halfway through,
For
because
sure.
you are doing something, you know, with being locked up in the house because of COVID. You may have the ability to work from home, but maybe you're not working at all, and you're spending more time looking at videos. You're like that visual
Yeah.
senses are a lot higher because you're finding things to do that are active, versus a passive type of thing.
Yeah.
So like watching a new TV show or scrolling through TikTok, and that's part of the reason, like we said earlier, that TikTok has such of a boom that it did, because of the it allows people to fill that time with an actual active type of attention span type of thing.
Yeah. Completely agree. I mean, I've even told bands that reach out to me for press stuff like, oh, we want to drop a song like right before Christmas. And I'm like, don't do it. Nobody's going to listen.
Yeah, for sure,
It's
for
just like
sure.
my personal opinion. I hate when new stuff drops too close to Christmas or even
Hmm.
like like that weird week in between like starting back at work and Christmas. Like I'm just
Yeah,
doing so many other things that I'm not going to take the time to listen to XYZ, but I'll do it as soon as I go back to work kind of thing.
for
I just
sure.
find that people don't give those sort of things the time it deserves. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, something that I've noticed doing what I do.
Do you think more bands should do Christmas or holiday related releases?
I personally love holiday releases in the
Yeah.
alternative music scene just because I love like the juxtaposition of like holiday cheer and like heavy metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
all orchestra, and it just makes sense. Orchestral, and
Yeah.
Yes,
it
for
makes a
sure.
lot of sense.
I have like a Christmas playlist that's just like August Burns Red, and like I think
Yep, yep.
Bro Job just dropped like a deathcore Christmas
Yeah,
EP,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like, this
That
is
August
amazing.
Burns Red
Yeah.
Christmas song was on my like high school playlist. I'm pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
That whole Sledding Hill album is just playing
Yeah.
front to back.
Right, right.
You can't take
Yeah.
it all so seriously. Like you gotta give them some novelties. I feel like.
For sure. I
Yeah.
think there's something to be said about just like bands that clearly have fun with their music versus the bands that
Hmm.
take themselves too seriously. Like serious music obviously is important, but like I love a good band from time to time, like an Electric Callboy where they're like their
Yeah.
songs are just fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, dude. Honestly, though, I agree. I think more bands should do it, but don't force it.
Yeah.
Whatever you think is funny, most of the time people might think is funny too. Plus, especially if you're like you're picking up traction and you're starting to get people from outside your area, it allows them to be able to with merch specifically, holiday themed merch. Do a
True.
limited run of something. Don't get 100 shirts of your Christmas stuff because you're going to be sitting on it for a long time.
Yeah.
But get a limited run and then offer it out to the people, and you'd be surprised how many people pick it up because I feel like they have a special something. It's like a rarity. It's like getting a rare
Never
baseball card.
yeah. Never underestimate the power of the limited run is what I always tell bands.
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
be okay with
Exclusive.
pressing 20 of these things and just
Yeah.
like they will sell.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
now
I
too, when
agree.
you say limited run, exclusive, it's like, well,
Yeah.
damn, like
Yeah.
I
it's
gotta
Yeah.
get my
gotta
You
hands
go.
on
gotta
this.
get this now. Yeah.
That's
For
why
sure.
like bands will put out like 20 different variants of an album, but each one's only like 50 of them. It's like each
Right.
one is limited, even though there's like 1,000 of these being pressed just in different forms.
Yep. Yep.
But
Yep. So
that's just like the
unreal.
consumer market that we live in at this point.
Exactly, and unrelated to music, but I have a buddy, Mike Johnson, who started this company called Puff Tough, and he just did. It's basically a cannabis-based clothing company,
Okay.
and he did a limited Christmas run of a sweater, and he sold out in like a week.
Nice.
Yeah, and he's absolutely killing it right now.
Yeah, it's
But
powerful.
yeah, Mario, are
So
you gonna
real
say
quick,
something?
I know most of this has been the online digital realm. So outside of that, like when it comes to in person or like street team stuff, how much of that does Scene Daddy get involved in, like offline?
The main thing that we do like offline is attend and review like concerts. Like I go to a lot of shows on behalf of Scene Daddy as like a media contact. This year under Scene Daddy, I was able to see Slipknot, My Chemical Romance, bunch of big bands that we
Nice.
were like didn't even think that we could get these opportunities, but
Yeah.
so awesome.
How do you work
Cool.
something out like that? You just talk to their publicist, like, "Hey, I'm a publicist too," or like, I don't know.
Yeah,
How do you?
honestly, there's no harm in asking. That's what I always tell
Yeah.
people. Like, I have had so many conversations with people that are like, I just don't know how to do this. I'm like, just ask. The worst they're gonna say is no.
No,
Like,
you're right.
You
Yeah.
can't
so
fear the rejection.
exactly.
Yeah.
I always just reach out and be like, hey, we have this platform. We have like 300,000 followers. I think that it could be worth your time if you have us go and just like
Hmm.
shout them out, write some content based on this, whatever. I'd say like half the time they're like, yeah, no, this makes sense. Like, oh, you ticket. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I've even just been at shows, not technically as a media contact, and been like posting stuff under Scene Daddy, and they're like, oh, I didn't even know you were at the show. Like, hey, let's
Yeah.
meet, or like, hey, next time, like, I got you for guest list, like, just like cool
Right.
stuff like that.
That's really
Um,
cool.
so that's like the main thing that we do, like in person. We would like to get into more like festival stuff. Um, again, we have like some things in the works that I don't really want to talk about right now.
Yep.
No
Sounds
worries,
good.
no worries.
Yeah.
That means it's good. That
um,
means it's real good.
Yep.
yeah. No, it is good. It is good. So just stay tuned for Scene Daddy's content next year.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. No, but we're trying to do more like in person stuff, especially at festivals, like just kind of like
Yeah.
acting as an influencer in that capacity. So taking it away from like an entertainment blog to an entertainment like person or
Yeah.
creator, trying to put that back on the person instead of the brand. I
Right.
think is important because I think at this point in social media, people want to follow people, not
Exactly. Yep.
publications. I
Yep.
would definitely notice that.
Yep.
So that's why we're trying to put that focus back on the people within the
Yeah.
company.
Even just getting out there and going to shows is really important too. There's
Yeah.
so many bands that don't do that enough, who just go to their shows, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of them lost sight of why they started a band, and why they're in a band, why they're playing, or they're a musician, and not to necessarily look at it as you have something I want, so I'm going to go to the show so that way you can get, or you have
Right.
something that I have, you know what I mean? But also look at it as a way to, develop new friendships and new connections, just show the local support that you want, it's just the age old saying of, treat others as you wish to be treated. It's the same
Yeah.
scenario for the music scene, go to
Absolutely.
shows.
Yeah, I think the big like another one of the biggest things that I can recommend is just like foster as many like connections as possible. Just be respectful to people; they appreciate that more than anything.
Yeah.
Always be willing to like have somebody reach out to you. Don't just like shut them down. One of the biggest
Hmm.
complaints that I've heard about like other publications is that they were just like left on red, didn't hear back,
Oh, wow.
versus like having just like an active communication source. So
Yeah.
yeah, highly recommend that.
Yeah, for
Which seems
sure.
so basic, but yeah,
It does. And and it's funny to bring up the left on red thing. I feel like a lot of people do that, and sometimes it may not be intentional.
right,
It may just be, oh, I'm doing something. Let me just read the message and I'll get back to them later. For
right,
me personally, I try not to open the message unless I can give them my full attention and give them
Yeah.
a response right away.
yeah. I try to do
Because
that too as much as possible. If
yeah,
I'm not
you
like
never
ready to
know
have this
how the other
conversation,
person's going to perceive it.
yeah, exactly. If I'm not ready to have this conversation, I don't want to even start it. So I'll
Right.
just like
Yep,
leave it
exactly.
as is until I'm
Yep.
ready to have that.
Yeah, yeah. It just it sets you up for success if if you open it, you respond right away. If you want to say no to whatever it is that they want to do, that's great. But one second.
Sounds like a cat.
Um,
Well, and I think
I have
social
cats.
media also kind of like socials have conditioned us to, where people are afraid of eye contact and like social settings and stuff, and I'm sure that doesn't help.
Yeah, I think just like COVID in general, being inside for like X number of years, with like a year and a half, with not as much, in-person content has been tough. Even for like I started TAing, not to like get back to PhD stuff, but I started TAing in like my first year. But this was the first term I actually did it in person. Very different vibe.
Mhm.
Yeah, even just like having discussions with people has been like so different. So yeah,
Like
it's definitely something
relearning.
that's gonna need to come back over time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. The last question I have, and we'll wrap it up here soon. In terms of Spotify, it's such a sensitive subject for a lot of people,
Right.
because people feel like they're not getting enough out of it as much as they might have used to. I mean, I think I saw somewhere that there's like 1 million people uploading music to Spotify a day or something like that, something
The
crazy.
market is way oversaturated. You can say
Absolutely,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. With the playlist types, like the editorial, the curated, is there anything that you have seen personally that seems to work out better for artists?
Uh, I mean, one of the bigger things that I've seen recommended is to always pitch a song no matter what, even if you don't think it's gonna happen, always do it.
Hmm.
And then also always have a Spotify canvas. I've heard that like I can't remember the exact percentage, but like X number of percent more songs that are approved have a Spotify canvas with them versus
Oh,
not.
really?
I don't
Okay.
know for whatever reason why.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, because I'm not like in a band myself, I don't do
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the pitching, so I
Mm-hmm.
don't have like tips and tricks on like what has worked for me because I just don't do it. This is just what
Sure.
I've heard
Yeah.
from other people.
Sure. Okay. That's
Yeah,
honestly, that's good. That's, I think a lot of people
yeah,
probably don't realize that. Honestly, I think the Spotify Canvas is just in itself makes you look a little more professional anyway.
yeah,
Um, Not that people are really watching it. They're not opening up their phone and looking at your song, but if it's eye catching enough, it it gives that ability to do that. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, is there a music video behind this? Because this looks like it's part of a music video. Let me
right.
go on YouTube and see if they have a music video for this song. You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just another way to grab that attention.
Yep, 100%. I think that there's something to said. Like, I know a lot of artists don't like the idea of like advertising for their
Hmm.
music, but I
Hmm.
found that that is honestly one of the best ways just to get your music in front of other people. You have to put in money to like get something out of it. There's a
Yeah.
whole other debate within that itself, but I
Right.
don't know. Being on the business side of these sort of things, like we've
Hmm.
definitely seen the advantages of doing it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you see that with Facebook and Instagram
yep,
mostly. And it almost seems like, too, like they have it set up in a way to where you have to spend money in order to get out there.
I
And,
mean,
and I've
because it's
thought
so
about,
oversaturated, you have to
well,
like
absolutely.
do
Definitely.
something to get your name in front of all of the others.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I thought about running an experiment of having two different Facebook pages of just both nonsense and boosting one Facebook page and keeping the other one organic and comparing the differences to see if it's
Yeah,
something that Facebook's algorithm picks up because you're spending money
that's
and
very
then
interesting. Yeah,
it just kind of
Probably.
toggles you down for when you're not spending money, you know?
yeah, I've heard about those sort of things. I haven't necessarily noticed any difference. Like, we do a lot of advertising through Scene Daddy for other artists. I haven't
Hmm.
like noticed any differences really in terms of like other than like the benefit of the ad itself. Like, we don't get like down. I don't know. Like pushed down in terms of reach when we're not spending money versus when we are.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, I've seen that debate as well. Not, yeah, I can't really weigh in on that one. I guess I haven't noticed
Yeah.
it myself personally.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Do you do anything particular with the Facebook posts that you haven't necessarily seen that, or maybe it's just people aren't using it properly, and that's what makes it seem like they're being toggled or throttled rather. I guess is the
So
better word.
I think it's the way that you're going about doing your advertising. So if you're just like putting a few bucks into like boosting your posts, it's
Hmm.
not going to go as far as like having an actual um like full on like you actually create an ad for like
Hmm.
successful conversions. Like a conversion campaign will be much more fruitful than you just boosting a post out to an unknown audience.
Okay,
So that's like
that
the
makes
benefit
sense.
of hiring somebody who actually understands the advertising aspect of
Hmm.
things.
Yeah,
Where
for
like
sure.
I can target these niche audiences that I know are going to like respond to that, and then being able to capture that data. So there's the whole like having a Facebook pixel and having all these things in
Yeah,
place before you even start like the advertising. That
yeah,
way you can kind of capitalize that as you move forward. So I'm
absolutely.
just talking as like an advertiser, but
Sure. Yeah, no, no, that's good. And honestly, you said something that is very important that a lot of bands don't have is a Facebook pixel.
yeah, it's my biggest
Can you
recommendation for
actually
any artist. Yeah.
explain what that is? Because I feel like a lot of people don't understand what it is.
Yeah, so like as an artist, so basically within your Facebook page, assuming you have one, because you have to have a Facebook page to have an Instagram essentially, and you have to have one to be able to run ads on Facebook. Um, you can set up what's called a pixel. I could pretty much walk you through it if I had,
Yeah.
if people had reached out to me, but
Yeah.
essentially it's just a piece of code that you add onto whatever website or landing page or Spotify, whatever, that can
Hmm.
track people, in a good way, that
Hmm.
are going to wherever you're sending them. So if you put a Facebook pixel on your landing page for a song, you have a new single, create a landing page for it with a bunch of different links. So you have like the album art, you have the Spotify link, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever. We would create like a custom conversion campaign for you. where we would target niche audiences, sending those people to this landing page with the optimization that they're going to click one of those links. Now, once they've gone to that page, if you have a Facebook pixel embedded on that, basically you can track that person's Facebook account, I guess. So that when
Activity.
you run ads again in the future, you can retarget people that have already interacted with your previous ads, which is, in terms of
Mhm.
retargeting, that is like the best marketing you can possibly do because people already showed some kind of interest. So
Yeah.
once they
So this would be
essentially
good
click through,
specifically for. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, once they already like click through, they may or may not continue down your process of like your click funnel essentially. So if you're trying to
Mhm.
sell merch too, if you get them to the page, that's one thing. If you get them to like click on a product, that's another thing. If you get them to input your credit card information, that's another thing. Then if they actually buy it, that's a
Mhm.
whole other thing. But you can target them at different stages of that process, with like,
Hmm.
hey, we saw you were interested in this thing. You may now want to buy it, and that tends to have a much higher percentage in terms of, purchasing or conversions.
Mhm.
Being able to retarget those people
So
is
this
much better.
is a large part of the reason why, if you're Googling something, say you're Googling, you want to get a new webcam or something like that. You go on Facebook, and sometimes they'll see an ad pop up on your Facebook that check out this webcam.
Yep.
That is because of pixels.
Yeah, pretty much. You can
Yeah.
basically instead. So a lot of what we do is music based, obviously. So we're targeting like, oh, this band is for fans of Spirit Box,
Hmm.
the Amity Affliction, whatever. We can
Hmm.
target those bands, like fans of those bands, with this new
Yeah.
band. So that's like a very promising way that we do advertising for bands.
Hmm.
But in terms of like, you can also advertise through Google, and that is much more widespread. So you can target
Sure.
based on interest. So people who have just searched webcams, people who have just searched audio mixers, whatever, I can sell them an audio
Hmm.
mixer. Like that gets into much more. That's where like I do a lot of YouTube advertising through Google Ads because there's
Okay.
a lot more availability there.
Yeah.
Um, Facebook and Instagram are kind of like the dominant when it comes to like Spotify marketing, we found though, instead of
Hmm.
Google versus
Do you
YouTube.
notice a difference in how the pixel? I'm trying to form my question. Okay, so if you get a band that has 10 likes and you get a band that has 10,000 likes, is there a difference in how that campaign works out in terms of pixel setup? Because with the 10 likes, you're kind of just shotgun blasting and just trying to find capture an audience that might be interested in them. With the band with 10,000 likes, you could use their natural reach already, and then just make sure you get to every person on that 10,000 likes list.
Right. I mean, there's different ways you can set up the ad. Like we can, within the same advertising campaign, we can target what we think are like these niche audiences that will resonate with this sound. And we can also target fans of your page already. So like,
That's what I was
because
asking. It just
yeah,
makes it better.
in terms of like reach, a lot of the times like bands will find that a lot of their posts don't reach everybody on that are like fans or that are like their page. So you can specifically send an ad to make sure all of those people are hit with this thing. And I mean, whether you're starting with 10 likes or 10,000 likes, if it's a new pixel, you're starting with the same amount of data. So
Hmm.
like you will, I get more data in a short term if you already have like a bigger page, like 10,000 likes, because you can
Yeah.
target all 10,000 of those people, then track them through the pixel, and now they're on that system forever. Versus
Hmm.
the band that has 10 likes, it's a bit more widespread. You kind of have to cast a wider net to capture more
Sure.
people, I find. Yeah.
So, do you think that they should wait till they get more of a following before they use that? No.
No,
Okay.
get a pixel as soon as possible. I tell every single band, get
Yeah.
a pixel established, get it on whatever you're sending people to. If you are like posting something like a photo with a link to your merch, or you're trying to sell merch, put a
Hmm.
pixel on your merch, because if you eventually want to target these people down the road when you have an advertising budget, then you can do that. Like
Right.
starting from day one is so important because you're going to build up that data over time, and that is going to be your biggest asset 5 years from now.
Cool. Good ad.
Yep.
Awesome.
Biggest recommendation, I guess.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
All right, Mario, you got anything?
No, I was just gonna elaborate on how valuable data is, and when I learned that, I started understanding like, oh, this is going to take a good amount of time to gather this data so we know where to go.
Yeah.
And just make it direct.
I will say Meta has not made it easy since Meta took over Facebook to like get all
Yeah.
these things set up. It's
Dude,
actually
don't
a
even
real
get
pain
me
in the
started
ass.
with Meta.
I'm so glad we've been through that together.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. That's why my pretty much whole job through Push has become getting people connected because it takes so long.
Yeah.
But once it's set up, you're set for like so long. So like just taking the time now to get it set up properly will be worth so much more down 5 years from now.
For sure. All right, man. Well, I think that's it. I appreciate you coming on here and giving us some good feedback and good tips and all that stuff. And thank you for being the first podcast host ever or guest ever on this podcast.
Yes, thank you. Tyler, where can everyone find you or Scene Daddy and whatnot?
Okay, so you can follow Scene Daddy at Scene Daddy on all social media. You can follow Don't Blink Music Group at Don't Blink MG, Facebook and Instagram. And then I think it's at Push Digital Marketing on all social media. And then my personal Instagram is at tj.don'tblink. I post a lot of like Don't Blink related things like
Yeah.
like press outlets and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to connect with me in any sort of capacity for any of the different ventures
Yeah.
that I'm involved in, or if you want to talk science, hit me up anytime.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
guys for having me on. Definitely appreciate it. Very cool to be the first guest. So
Yeah,
very
man.
exciting.
Yeah, buddy.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I'll talk to you guys later.
Take care.
Peace.